Welcome to Primary Math 2. I'm very excited to work with you and help you see how fascinating math is and how many connections there are with math and numbers, and there's just a lot of fun things we'll see this year. And I'm excited to spend the year with you working through these things. Each time you start a workbook exercise, you'll have a recording to watch. Now sometimes I make one recording for a couple of exercises, but you'll see in the top left part of your screen it says 2A. That's the workbook and textbook you're using. This recording is to be watched before you do exercise 1 in the 2A workbook, and to help me explain this, I'm looking at the textbook of 2A, pages 6 through 8. So if you always have your textbook in front of you, you'll see some really lovely, beautiful pictures that the book draws, and you'll look at the pictures that I draw and you'll think, wow, that looks nothing like the book, because Mrs. Barnett is not much of an artist. But that's okay. We make it up and we make symbols, and I think it all works out just fine. So let's talk about the material you need to know for exercise 1. Now, if you are in Singapore Math Primary 1A and 1B, all of this will be very familiar to you. If you weren't, it still may be familiar because everybody teaches this in some way, but especially if you were not in Singapore Math for Primary 1A and 1B, really listen and pay attention to make sure you start thinking about numbers the same way we've been thinking about numbers, because that's very important. On page 6, do you remember this from last year? It shows a picture of crayons. Now they have a beautiful picture, and every picture has a band around it that says 10. I can't draw that, but I draw a picture like this, and that stands for a 10. Every time you see a box with a check mark in it on my board, it stands for some really lovely drawing that they have in the book that stands for a 10. So when we talk about the number 83, we want to remember that that means there are 8 10s and 3 1s, just like in the crayons. There are 8 packages of 10 crayons, and then there are 3 extra crayons on the side. When you look at that, you can know that that is 80 crayons, 8 10s is 80, and there are 3 extra. You can think of it like 8 10s, 3 1s, and you could say all together 80 and 3 is 83. That's what we mean by the number 83. We mean 8 10s and 3 1s, and that's a very important way to think about the number 83. So now look over on page 7. See those beautiful mangoes that they draw in those boxes? I drew boxes with a check mark inside. Then they drew 5 mangoes on the outside of the box, and I just drew 5 dots. But we're thinking about numbers, and the question says, how many mangoes are there? There are 4 10s and 5 1s, so one thing to realize is that there are 45 mangoes. Then notice the different way we could ask that same question. Part B says 40 and 5 make what? 40 and 5 make 45. Another way we could ask that, 5 more than 40? 5 more than 40 is 45. That's another way to ask the same question. Or you could do it with a plus sign. 40 plus 5 equals 45. So you can show it with boxes and extras. You can think about it in terms of 40 and 5, 5 more than 40, or 40 plus 5. All of that is saying the same thing. At the bottom of page 7 is a reminder about counting by tens. Just like you would count to 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you can count the same thing when you count by tens. It's 1 10, 2 10s, 3 10s, 4 10s, and we have a number, a word for those numbers. It's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and 100. Have you ever stopped to realize 3 10s is 30, 7 10s is 70, look at this one, 10 10s is 100. See, that's 9 tens, 8 tens, 7 tens. This is 10 tens. When you have 10 tens, you have 100. Look on page 8, and this is a reminder that when you look at the number 26, there's a 2 in the area that we call that the tens place, and then there's a 6. That first number tells you how many tens there are. There are 2 tens. The next number tells you how many ones there are. There are 6 ones. 2 tens, 6 ones is the number 26. That's what we mean by 26. 26 means there are 2 tens, 6 ones. What if you look at the next one and you have a box that says in the tens there are 4 and in the ones there are 3? Look, I drew that. I have 4 tens, 3 ones, or I wrote it in words, 4 tens, 3 ones. What is the number represented by 4 tens, 3 ones? That number is 43. When you see the number 43, you need to think about having 4 tens and 3 ones. The last problem has a 5 in the tens box and a 7 in the ones box. You could draw that out as they did, and you would realize there are 5 tens, 7 ones gives us the number 57. So exercise 1 is all about those ideas, those concepts. It should feel very much like a review, just to remember and start thinking about the words and the places and the tens like we thought about it last year if you were with Singapore Math, or like you've done it before probably, even if you weren't in Singapore Math. But just make sure that when you see a number, you realize that that first number, if you have 2 digits like this, that first number tells you how many tens you have. The second number tells you how many ones you have. That's very, very important.